Well, I wanted to do a different video tonight, but I'm having trouble explaining that one. So I'm gonna do my rant about sodium and LED lights. I very much dislike LED street lights, and understand I've got nothing against LED light bulbs. I use them in my own house. They're efficient. They're cooler than the what are they called? Like the type of incandescent bulbs that you can still buy, but I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head. I'm sure I will in a bit. But they give out better light than LED bulbs do, like slightly better. I use them in the outdoor fixtures just because they're more durable. But this isn't about LED house lights. This is about LED street lights, and I'll explain to you why I don't think that LED street lights are a good thing. And the main reason is the the light spectrum they give off. LED lights give off a very blue light, similar to it's very similar to sunlight, and so probably the worst aspect of them is they simulate daylight, which you don't want at night. It's not healthy for us. It causes insomnia in people. Like I was reading somewhere that with an LED light, it's like 4 times worse in terms of insomnia than a sodium lamp, like I'm showing on here. Because if you look, a sodium lamp gives off a very yellow light, whereas LED is literally just daylight. Like that's the spectrum it's giving off, and that's not the only problem either. Like there's a light wash effect that high pressure sodium gives off, where where it's a where it tends to light up more things, and an LED streetlight won't light off as much. And so like that's the other downside, I guess. But you can see with the even with this picture here, the LED streetlights give off a very bright white light, but you can't make out these buildings behind here because the wash is not, it doesn't give off a good light wash. Like this is all dark back here. Like the oh man, the the wash of the light just isn't good with these lights. Like the area they light up, whereas back here you see the sodium lights reflecting off the buildings. And see, there's the insomnia part. These are going to be very bad for wildlife because wildlife's going to mistake this for daylight. It's bad for light pollution, like because it's such a it's such a white light. It's not good for astronomers, like astronomy, things like that. Um, and I think it's funny because they say like this picture in specific says better solution, outdated technology. And really the only advantage that LED lights really have is is that the usage of electricity is lower with an LED light than with a sodium. And that's the main selling point of LED lights. And while we're on it though, I'm going to go over the only two advantages. If you're looking for daylight, like a daylight wavelength, then LED is going to do that very well. Like LED gives off a very good daylight, but and there's also like I said, low electricity usage. Another issue with LED lights, they require a lot of circuitry. Like the LEDs have to be mounted on a circuit board. That's going to corrode in the weather. And the way to keep it from doing that is to coat it, which is going to make the lights very difficult to repair and work on. And if one of these lights breaks down, you have to replace the whole thing. You're not replacing a bulb like in a sodium light. Um, besides the fact that it mimics daylight, it's a very ugly light that they give off. And I really wish I could get a good picture of them in this town that's near me. because when you're driving, it actually hurts your eyes. Just the glare of these lights. The light they give off is extremely harsh, and that'll damage. Like if you're doing a lot of driving at night and things like that, that's going to damage your eyes over time. And you'll see this with LED car lights too. They're so bright they hurt your eyes, and there's not many ways around this except maybe putting a lens on this, like a like a gel. And another issue with it not lighting up a huge area like these sodium lights, like again, you look over here, there's more lit up over here than over here. There's the contrast as well. What they light up, you can actually see better with these lights than you can with an LED light, because the the contrast isn't as bad under this wavelength of light. So you can actually make out more with these lights. And again, you can see it with the trees. Like, look at the trees over here. You can still see the ones in the back, but look at the trees on this side. Like, it's a very concentrated beam on this side. And I'm sure you could fix that a little bit with putting a lens on here, which a lot of them don't have, but that's not something you're going to be able to sort of completely get rid of. And like even here, look how close they had to put the lights together to get this sort of brightness. And you look over here and look how far, like you've got one light for every 2 or 3 LED lights on this side. And let's see what else. Again, with the way the lighting looks, now the town I'm talking about near me, like this is going to ruin the ambiance of a neighborhood, like a traditional style walkable area. The town I'm talking about has a very nice main street where you can walk place to place, you can walk house to house, and when they replaced the sodium lights on the main street, it just completely ruined the feel of the street. It no longer had a cozy, warm, comfortable feel. It just completely changed over to this cold white light. And for people living along the street, that's going to cause them more insomnia. Like it's not a positive thing. And don't think you can escape this by not living in an area where these lights are. There's an apartment complex very close to here, and that place is lit up like a baseball stadium. I mean, the lights are extremely bright and they shine through the trees into our neighborhood, and I'm sure they keep people awake, and people probably are there just wondering why they're kept awake by lights all night. Like, I'm surprised more people aren't complaining about this. Maybe they just don't realize it yet. But, like, even if you end up staring directly at these lights, they won't hurt your eyes the way an LED light will. And, I mean, I have the same complaint about, like, you see people with cars with those xenon headlights, which those might be replaced with LED too. I don't even know if xenon is still a common thing for headlights or if it's just all LED now, but I know those xenon headlights they'd blind you for a sec when you passed a car with those headlights in it. And so you wouldn't be able to see the road ahead of you for a sec. And I think that's why I think they're outlawed in a lot of areas, those xenon lights. But a lot of new car headlights are LEDs now, and like that's shining directly into your eyes when you pass those cars. It's not good. Cost, these fixtures are very cheap. I believe they're only a little more expensive than an LED fixture, but with these fixtures, everything in this thing is built to last. Like there's fixtures like this that are going on 60 years old that still work fine. And everything in it, now I'd have to go to a lighting website to actually have somebody explain it, but there are people that break all this stuff down. and explain exactly why these streetlights aren't going to last as long as the manufacturers claim. Because none of this stuff in LED lights is built to last. Think of how long your laptop would last if you had it in like a screened-in porch and that was where you kept it. And heck, a screened-in porch actually it still has protection from direct sunlight, which is like the worst when it comes to outdoor stuff. But anyway, it's just my gripe about LED lights. They've been installing these like crazy near where I live, and I hate it. I hate it so much. If I ever have to drive at night, like the lights hurt your eyes, and then it's just you get home and you're being kept awake by it, and it's not really necessarily better for like truckers and people like that because, like I mentioned before, it's just not the right light spectrum to be staring at night. It's just going to hurt your eyes more in the long run. It's going to end up ruining people's eyes who have to work around this all night. And it's different. They're different from a from like the indoor LED bulbs because the indoor ones are much lower voltage and are designed specifically to mimic incandescent bulbs, like give off the same light because that was a huge problem with when they did the fluorescent lights was people hated the light they gave off because it had a very bad color to it. And then they'd have to warm up and like they wouldn't be at their full brightness until they warmed up. Uh and the last thing I wanted to mention was just kind of a nitpicky thing. Like and it's the look of LED fixtures. They don't look like a light. Like search LED streetlight. I probably should have had this pulled up already, but I'm not good at planning out videos. They look like a tennis racket. They look like a phone. It's just like a flat thing, and especially if you've got an area like again that traditional town that I talked about with their main street. These are going to make the main street feel very cold and very unwelcoming. And they're going to do that for pretty much any roadway you use too. I mean, given roadways aren't the best place to be to begin with, I mean, the last place I like being is on highways. That's why I never take highways anywhere. But but it's going to make it feel a lot worse. Like that to me just looks way better than an LED fixture, and that's not even an attractive sodium fixture. That's or no, that's an LED one. I guess it's an older LED one because the new ones are just like this. They're just like a flat thing. They're like that. Like all the ones they installed around here look like this. But even if before they didn't have the sodium fixtures weren't nice looking, the LED ones are far worse. I mean, there's a lot of people who live near LED streetlights too. Like I was reading a story about a woman who she had to get blackout shades for her house because she couldn't sleep with the really bright LED lights they put outside her house in Los Angeles. And I mean, streetlights are already pretty bad for nature and like bats and moths and birds. Like they're already bad for animals. So even without being LED. You see with this though, look at the spread versus this. And like this is okay for like a parking lot, but for a highway you want something like this with a bigger spread and better contrast. You don't want an LED light. I mean, I shouldn't say you don't want because, you know, everybody should make up their own minds on these things. But like that has a much nicer glow to it in a oh, what is it? In like a traditional town. But I should address this because like I said, that's probably one of the downsides of sodium lights is you do You do get light pollution up in the sky, but well, then again, I don't know because this is probably talking about individual fixtures, which they'll probably have to install more of to actually make up for the sodium fixtures that they're replacing. But you see over here, like look at this side right here, the buildings and stuff compared to this side with the LED lights. Look how dark the areas outside of the light's range are versus over here the sodium lights. It's pretty amazing actually. Hard to tell from this picture. I don't know. Wish it would load. Like imagine trying to sleep on this street versus that street. This looks like daylight. Like I can see why that woman in Los Angeles was so peeved about the lights being replaced. And it wouldn't be so bad if they did if they put like gels in these like or change the color to be more of a warm color. But they just put them up and just they just have bare LEDs in them to give off this just bright white light. But anyway, I didn't want to go on too long with this picture. There's something to be said about nice looking street lights too. Like they try to be clever with these lights and make something that's kind of cool looking, but it's not attractive. It's not nice to look at. But you look at a street light like this with that's more ornate and has a more traditional style. This is much nicer to look at than that one. And you'll see this with a lot of traditional street lights. And I don't know if people realize it, but you see the areas where people tend to want to spend more time around, and they're always these more traditional neighborhoods. And you know, you take a look at nature. Nature doesn't have jarring shapes like this in it, where it's very like this is very clearly manufactured. Like it looks like something that came out of a factory. But you look at something like this, like you look at a tree or something like that, it's going to have complexity to it. It's going to have like lots of small little lines and shapes, you know. It's going to be more like that, but it's not going to look like this. I think so much of architecture and artistry is just trying to find something like make something that looks like a corporate logo or something that would be around an office building, and they do like minimalist stuff like this and try to make it look really clever, and they just put that out there like that's all you really need, and you don't actually need soul and need something, and you don't actually need beauty. Like all you need is just this clever thing where it's like, look, I designed something that's different than what the other people designed, but I didn't put much effort into it. It's like abstract art. Like I swear abstract art is a money laundering scheme. Look how nice that looks though. And look how many different styles of lights you have. There's so much flexibility when you go with a traditional style light. You could do something like this, which is more minimalist and more modern, but it still has that warmth to it. It still has that beauty. You could do something like that. That's still relatively modern looking. Like it's got a nice like it's got a more contemporary feel to it, but it's still very attractive. Or you could do something like that that's more decorative. And during the day, your light post itself it can be a piece of artwork. I mean, there's so many different designs you can choose from in terms of making a traditional style light. You could do something like that that's more sort of more Asian looking. You do that too. Like it's even got low profile lights down here to shine more on whatever is going to be hanging from these poles. More Asian inspired lights like that. I wouldn't put that in an American city though, except for like Chinatown. But you could put these around Hong Kong or in cities in mainland China to get this sort of look. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it from like a stereotypical perspective of just like, oh, we got to make everything look like a pagoda. I don't know. Like I said, uh, I'm just a dumb American. So, but here's some nice looking ones. Red ones. You got this one with the gold on it. I don't know. I like these lights personally, but maybe I'm offending people by saying these would look nice in cities in China. Like, I don't know. Every spot should have its own personality. It shouldn't be a case of every place we build looks the same and all the stuff we put in it looks the same. It should be it should be crafted for the region. Like I wouldn't put lights like this in I don't know. I'm trying to think of a spot that I wouldn't put these, but like I wouldn't put these in Miami because they would look a little out of place in Miami. You know, you'd want something more streamlined, something more like that. Like this would be more for a colonial town or like a London, like a British city. Then you can go to places in like the even older towns in Europe and see lights like that. I assume that's in Europe at least. It's a very pretty light. But see what I mean? There's so much variation you can have with light fixtures. It's a shame that most places you go to they all look the same. And don't give me that there's not a big selection because I've looked at commercial lighting companies and there is a huge selection of different street lights you can buy to put in your town. And most of them will custom make lights in large orders for the application. So it's not a matter of what can you get. And again, here's another one that would probably be great for if it ever focuses. That would be great for a place like Miami because it's got an Art Deco look to it. Like even that, like that's a nice looking light fixture. I don't like the wavelength of the light. I'd put more of a yellow shade of light in these. Like that wavelength of light it can be hard to look at when you're walking down an urban street at night. Like, see what I mean? It's not. That's not so bad though. It's marginally better than LED lights in terms of its color. Color's another thing too. The lights don't all have to be the same color. You can make your street lights in the team colors of the local city. You can do greens. You can do browns. Like, there's such a lack of originality when it comes to a lot of places in the US because there's just a craze of they call it minimalism, but really what it is just factory streamlining everything. Like the art style that's popular right now and the architectural style, it's like a dream to most manufacturers because you can go to IKEA and have something like that slapped together in no time and just like you don't have to put any effort into it. Just design boxes, build a box, make furniture that's a box, make lights that look like boxes. And this isn't specifically a problem with LED lights, but just lots of different commercial lighting in general. Like you'll see parking lot lights that look like this, but are sodium lights. It's a very ugly, like inhuman design. Like there's no humanity to it. And even like you can see they put some effort into styling it to look interesting, but most people aren't going to see this from ground level and think, man, that's an interesting looking light, or that's a nice looking light. Like they try to do it with this one, and it just looks like you took all the interesting parts out of a traditional street light to make something like this. Like here's the thought process I think went through the heads of the people designing this. How can we make something that still technically looks like a traditional street light at the very lowest cost possible and making it the quickest? And I think again, it's these lights aren't going to last as long as they say that they're going to last. So probably making them as cheaply as possible in this style is part of their whole sort of plan to just crank these things out. Like something like this, you're not going to be able to replace this circle of lights. You're going to have to take the whole thing apart and rebuild it, or just replace the light. And don't get me started on Detroit. Detroit used to have a lot of beautiful, beautiful Art Deco lights in their city, and they replaced them all with just ugly highway lights, the same lights that are lighting up every highway in America. And they're happy about that. Like you could have just fixed the fixtures that were there, maybe rewired them or something like that, and it would have been cheaper. But no, we'll replace all of them with freaking highway lights because everybody loves going to a place and seeing a highway light. Like that's definitely going to make your town more welcoming to people. But they make bulbs too that you can put in just to like. That's another thing I don't really get. Why not just get a bunch of LED light bulbs to replace the sodium bulbs in street lights that are already there? I mean, they're already there. There's nothing wrong with them, and you're replacing hundreds and thousands of fixtures that could serve a much longer lifespan. But we got to have these street lights where it just looks like that. We can't just replace the bulbs and get the energy savings and do it for far cheaper. We got to replace the whole fixture for some reason. It's not like they're replacing with a nicer looking fixture too. The fixtures are just as ugly as ever. I wonder what Berkeley. What does Berkeley think of these new streetlights? I don't usually put a lot of sway in people from Berkeley. I mean, we've had no shortage of crazy people come out of that place, but let's see what they say. Sorry, I can't read stuff out loud. I'm just not good at it. In 2012 and 2013, more than 100 streetlights were replaced with LED lights at the Berkeley Marina and along Telegraph Avenue. This year, City plans to finish the job and is slated to replace all 8,000 of its old streetlights with LEDs. And you gotta imagine, in some cities, these streetlights are very, very old and very historical. So I don't know how it is with Berkeley, but I know downtown Los Angeles has a lot of very pretty, very historical streetlights there. And even a lot of those have been replaced, so. The new bulbs use 65 to 85% less energy than the high pressure sodium lights, as if that's the only thing that matters, and that's the only thing that makes them environmentally friendly. That's it? I want you to see this. I want you to look directly at this. They should last 15 to 17 years. That is nothing. I mentioned earlier in the video, there are sodium lights that have been in continuous service, like in large numbers for 60 plus years, and they're giving these a life expectancy of 15 to 17 years. That is shit. That is a terrible lifespan. And they're going to replace every light in many, many American cities with these. Probably the majority of American cities will. And You're going to be replacing streetlights, entire streetlights, every 15 to 17 years. That's just mental. That is so wasteful. Like, why? Did they not even take that into consideration when they started replacing all these streetlights? That we're going to have to rip out these LED lights in 15 years and replace them. Oh my gosh. That is not that is not true. That is something they said to make this sound okay. There is actually an intersection near my house, and they have had the same sodium fixtures there since the 1960s when they built that highway. The only thing I can think that they mean is the bulb itself, which is, yeah, that's probably what they mean when they said this. They mean the light bulb. Oh my gosh, this is so sneaky the way this is written. This is very sneaky. I just want to see if anybody is raised any complaints about this. I mean, people's views tend to be like new is better, and they don't understand that to build like an electric car or something, you're using a lot more rare materials to build an electric car. I mean, you take a regular internal combustion car, it's all steel, but you take an electric car, there's a ton of copper that goes into that to drive the motors. There's the materials they make the batteries out of with solar panels. There's all kinds of rare metals that go into that. And people never take this stuff into account when they instantly jump on the bandwagon of we need to replace whatever's already there. Many like the lights, particularly since it gives truer light that covers more area. And I've already mentioned why that's a negative thing for for cities and living around it. It's going to keep you up at night. Not necessarily safer, and I've mentioned that you've got a better contrast with sodium lights. The spread is much better, and the way they light things up, it lets you make out objects more easily. LED lights create a lot of dark areas because the contrast is much higher with an LED light between the area it's lighting up and the areas it's not lighting up. Like if you got an area with a lot of trees, awnings, things like that, which most cities have, but not everybody has been pleased with the conversion. Ten comments from people who were concerned with the brightness, Chaco said. Some community members expressed a preference to walk in dimmer light. And it's not even necessarily that, it's a different kind of light. It's not just that it's dimmer. It's oh man, this is so, like, the way they're selling this is very, very sneaky. And people are going to realize this probably well, I hope people are going to realize this, but to be honest, I don't have that much faith in people realizing things. Because by and large, they don't. It's like the whole put a frog in boiling a frog in water thing where you slowly turn up the temperature and the frog doesn't notice. It's that whole analogy with you do that with people. And if you can just change everything over to LED lights and people have nothing to compare it to, they're not going to realize that there is a difference between the two. They're going to notice that they're not sleeping well. They're going to notice that their city's not as pretty, but they're not going to notice they're not going to notice why. They're not going to notice exactly why things have gotten slightly worse and why everything shouldn't be lighted up with daylight at night. They get about 4 complaints per light. That sounds about right. What did it say they had to replace? 8,000 lights. So what's 8,000 times 4? Berkeley's received closer to 2 because they're all crazy environmental extremists who the only thing they care about is energy usage. Residents have also taken to online forums such as Twitter to discuss the replacements. Imagine people from Berkeley being on Twitter. What a world. That's the thing that I don't like. I don't like the intensity. I don't like the harshness. Way too bright. Like I don't. The thing is too, they probably won't get like you can put a filter over these to make them more warm and dimmer, but they're not. It's still gonna say have the same downsides that an LED light has. Like I don't think that's. It'll probably improve people's sleeping because it'll filter out the blue light, but other downsides like you won't have the same contrast, the as good a contrast with them as you do with sodium lights. The one that's been changed is at the front of our house. This light is bright enough to light our living room, and we look at it head on from our bedroom window, which the like that's got to be fun if you're one of those people who likes to have your curtains open. Like all of a sudden you have to get blackout shades. That's the other thing too. There's no really attempt to shield it to shield the light at all. Like you look up and you look directly into the bulb into the the quote unquote bulb. I don't know what you call it for an LED light. I'm sure there's some technical term for it, but yeah, that's another thing I mentioned earlier. Like it's gonna disrupt. I think it's gonna disrupt animal sleep and feeding cycles, and there's obviously aesthetic stuff. Like you're not gonna be able to see stars as well when you have brighter lights. And this is a valid concern too. Like a lot of people hate the orange light that sodium lights give off. And when I was younger, I used to dislike it, but as I've gotten older, I tend to like it more, and that might be because it's going away, so it's becoming more something more sort of rare and special. But I don't know. I've gotten to where I appreciate the positive aspects a lot more. Honestly, I'm on the fence about whether or not I want to have darker streets because on the one hand, like not having lights on your street, you're gonna sleep way better. There's not gonna be light pollution, and I'm talking no streets versus really bright lights, or I'm talking no lights versus bright lights. Like I think we'd all be better off if we could just remove as many street lights as possible and just not have street lights in a lot of areas. But you have you have a lot of people talking about they prefer to have bright lights, but in in San Francisco, that's probably important to have bright streets because, homeless people and crime, which didn't used to be a problem in San Francisco, but, politicians did what politicians do. I don't know. I think we'd be better off just getting to where we have a regular like where we're not out in the public streets into like the entire night. Like maybe like 10 p.m. or so, you turn all the lights off or something. I don't know. I say that as somebody who's a night owl, so I'm not the best person to be going out and saying that we need to fix our sleep schedule. It's they got a loan to do this, huh? It'll save 400,000 on electricity, but what about the cost to replace those fixtures every 15 years? Something a little sketchy about that. Eh, like I do get it. There's a lot of advantages to like lower electricity usage, but there's downsides. You got to keep that in mind. Not everything's going to be a perfect ace in the hole, like LED lights inside the house have been, where you can get LED lights that just look like regular incandescent bulbs now. You have them in different places, and they're not going to give out good light. Like I have LED bulbs in my fluorescent lights down here, and they give off the ugliest light. I just end up turning those lights off and putting on like turning on like table lights, and it's kind of dark, but it's not a oh man, not like the oh man, I forgot what I was even talking about. I guess it kills politicians to have people screw in a bulb every 5 to 10 years. Yeah, that's a good point there. Like another thing they're trying to do is because they've been kind of stupid and really given out way too much in terms of benefits to public employees and public employee unions. They're trying to minimize the amount of labor they have to use. So like they hate having to spend money on people going around and replacing bulbs every so often. I just know too that they aren't going to replace these dead fixtures unless somebody complains about them. That's another good point. Like, will they actually go around and replace these fixtures every 15 years? Like, 5 to 10 years for a bulb, and then, like, that's just screwing in a light bulb. That's going around, you drive your cherry picker up, you take the lens off the fixture, and you screw in a new bulb. Like, 5 minutes of work. And how long does it replace them to how long does it take them to replace an entire fixture? Like, and it's again easy on the eyes. All the while did a good job at lighting the streets because the majority used refractors to spread the light evenly. Now these new LED, while not that harsh, ugly, cold blue that I've seen in the city next door, which basically the streets are dark there because they glow so dim. That's the same ones in the town near me. They're a very cold blue color. So I guess the ones in Berkeley have a little bit of a lens on them, so that they're not that color. They have a more yellow warm light tint to them, which that's good. At least they did. At least they did that. Usually they don't even do that. They just put them with that ugly, ugly blue light. But they're wicked. They are wicked bright and mega glare. I forgot they used Wicked in Berkeley too. I thought that was just a New England thing. And it's the same complaint I have. I hate driving under LED lights because they shine into your eyes and it hurts your eyes. But what's odd is that at the same time they're horrible at lighting the roads. And it's the same way here. Like there's a lot of dim spots, and I mentioned that before. And this guy gets it. Never mind when it's raining, they become even worse from the wet pavement. The majority of the light seems to become a clustered reflection from the water. It's some really ironic how dim ugly orange lights do a better job than these spotlights that do a big nothing in terms of lighting. Green and saving money, sure, I'm all for it, but what happens if they put an orange filter on the lights so they mimic an HPS lamp? I'm yet to see it, and I kind of want to see it. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I get it, but I wish they'd make them work more like a sodium fixture. But oh, he's mentioning exact. I live nowhere near here, but I just wonder 5 years later if of this mass HPS purge, how many LEDs have failed in this town? My town here on the northeast coast recently went LED, and some of the lights have already failed not even half a year later. See, this is exactly what I'm saying. These are not reliable fixtures. They replace perfectly working lights with junk that failed within a month. Cool use of my local tax money, guys. Some are completely dead, and a few are glowing very dim to the point that it doesn't output much light on the street. I also found a fixture with a single LED in it. I guess it kills politicians to have people screwing a bulb every 5 to 10 years. The former HPS is burning the same height for over 10 plus years while still going strong for a strong. But I say fixtures because the LEDs are built into the fixture. That's another thing I've mentioned, and cannot be replaced after death. So therefore, the entire unit is junk because they think they will go for 15 plus years. When the old lights were owned by the utility company, they would be routinely maintained even if the bulb still worked fine, especially on main roads, of course. So you rarely saw a dead lamp in town. What's funny is when I saw more and more lamps failing in the town without them being serviced, I automatically knew the town was going to wipe them out for LEDs, and I was right. Yeah, that's another thing. They stop servicing them if they know they're going to replace them. Like I agree with this guy. I like the orange glow better, but genius. Thank. I don't know if this is a comment to this. I have to find doctors issue warning of doctors issue warning about LED streetlights. I just want to open that up real quick because I was gonna search an article like that, and that's how they put them up in my neighborhood. They're just too bright. Yeah, same complaint. Wish they would at least dim them down after like 10 or like in order to make these light the same amount that a sodium light's gonna light up, you have to make them brighter. And because of how obnoxiously bright they are, it's preventing people from sleeping. Nighttime in Berkeley is ruined for me. I have a beautiful view of the Berkeley Hills from my kitchen window. The harsh bright LED streetlights of Shattuck Avenue shine directly into my window. It's as though I'm in a stadium. And I've said that about the apartment buildings by my house. They've all been replaced with LED and they're all ridiculously bright. It literally looks like a football stadium. I often come home at night after work and I find the contrast of light and dark are more extreme because of how these new confounded lights in the dark shadows I can barely see to walk. That's the same complaint I have. Like if you don't make them obnoxiously bright, you're not going to be able to see into the shadows. When I drive in residential areas, the pedestrians are harder to see because the lights create a sickly blue wash obscuring what needs to be seen. I feel as though I'm in a grade B film noir dud of a movie. I dread the night anymore. I heard that in Davis, California, the residents complained loud enough that the city was forced to modify the LED streetlights. We should do that here. I applaud anything and blah blah blah. LEDs are extremely efficient. I sure hope the savings will translate into something that we can all use. They won't because it's frickin' city government. They never have practicality on their minds unless you really push it. Yeah, I'm surprised I've not seen. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me when I began to notice strange patterns on the street and sidewalks at night. It took a friend who is famous, who lives in my neighborhood, explaining what was going on. Since each street light is actually composed of a number of LEDs, I think it is six or maybe nine. Each one acts as a separate light source, casting its own shadow on the ground, so as the light passes over an object, such as a tree branch, you end up with not one shadow of the object, but many shadows, as there are LEDs in the street lamp. Since the LEDs are spaced somewhat apart from each other in the lamp, therefore its respective shadow is offset as well. This makes for a very busy series of shadows, which, yeah, I don't know if I've noticed that yet. I'm sure I will, but that's another thing. It creates distractions. As much as I like modern art, why? Are annoying and discombobulating to the eye. Has anyone else noticed this? The first thing I immediately noticed was the blunt, sharp, bright light right facing my house. I couldn't look at it straight for 1 second as it dazzled my eyes. My yard was like being exposed by a high beam spotlight, and I have bedroom also face. This person sounds like they're not an English speaker. For a second, I was doubting myself if this is a legitimate concern, and I immediately went on Google searching for bright street light. Looks like we have lots of people sharing this concern. I bought house in Berkeley hoping to see the night sky with stars, but this bright street light is just awful. My current rental place in San Francisco is even more quieter and dimmer than Berkeley. You can collect it really raise. I'm offered, however, these LED lights, they're on the blue spectrum, which mimics sunlight. Sunlight-like spectrum makes our bodies believe that it is daytime. Like, it's the same problem with staring at a computer screen too long at night or staring at a smartphone. It's going to keep you awake later. It's going to trigger that effect where it's going to keep your body awake. Put amber colored gels on the lamps and disable every other street lamp. Like, that's something they should do anyway, to be honest. There's too many street lights in a lot of these places. The lampposts are spaced for older models of lighting that were not as bright. We don't need an LED lamp every post. Most people liking these lights probably don't have them a few feet from their windows as I do. I like the way he said that. And yes, I've already invested in blackout curtains, but I have skylights too, and curtains don't realistically take care. Oh, that sucks. That's gotta suck, man. Having them shining into skylights. Oh my gosh. But I chose to live in the North Berkeley Hills rather than an industrial area for a reason, and this is, well, disgusting. An obvious influence on whether people are happy with the new lights is location. On streets within 1-2 mile of a is relatively high late into the evening. The bright lights may lend a feel of security, although there is good evidence that the blue white light of LED interferes with night. Oh, yeah, that's another good point actually. Night vision, making shadows more obscure. Yeah, that's a good point actually. I mentioned the contrast before, but I didn't think about what effect it has on night vision. That are not part of typical pedestrian routes. The lights are absurdly overpowered. There's streets that aren't going to be busy at night. You don't really need these bright street lights. Light pollution. I didn't read, but with bad implementation. Berkeley spends over 100 years to make a pleasant light. That's interesting. I didn't know that was a thing. I remember looking at something a while ago where they talked about how Berkeley is intentionally making it a nicer place to live now. I didn't know that was a thing 100 years ago, though. That's interesting. Now it's like a light industrial warehouse zone. The new lights are unpleasant, cold, and too bright. And yes, in my opinion, dim yellow-orange lights does make a place aesthetically more pleasant than a place lit with bright blue-white lights. Bright blue lights is reminiscent of an industrial warehouse zone. They are terrible for residential areas, way too bright, can't see the stars anymore. I had to buy special light through shades because there's so much light in my room at night. Maybe okay at BART, but really don't increase safety in residential neighborhoods. Instead, those lights just make it hard to sleep, making the people cranky. Does Berkeley need more cranky? That's a good point, actually. They just installed one in front of my house at the light spill, and it is almost 180 degrees awful. My house was dark before, but now the light is blasting in through my second story windows. There's enough light pollution within the city adding to the problem. The majority of the posts are from persons who do not like the new lights. Many of these majority posts offer intelligent solutions, but it's unlike these solutions will materials without ballot action. Sharing ideas and feelings will not complete the task of forcing city officials to. Man, I wish everybody had this attitude when talking about city officials. Like, if you don't like your officials, it's time to vote them out. Like, even if the person you vote in doesn't come from the political party you like, you gotta vote these people out. You gotta show them that if you don't like them, something's gonna happen. If this is ugly light for an ugly world, then maybe the light is appropriate. Man, more postmodern BS. Like, Like, just because bad things happen in the world, we need to punish ourselves for it. Like, that's some BS there. The majority of my neighbors like the new lights. They wouldn't bother posting here because they're happy with the change. Your personal preference for a dull yellow light that offers insufficient sidewalk lighting over a cool white that allows like, that's not necessarily true. Like I've explained, it's a different kind of light. If it's a spotlight effect. So what you're doing is you're lighting a small area much brighter versus a sodium light, which bathes everything in light. So do you work for the company installing the lights? Or personal preference does play a role in many things. The majority of my neighbors do not like the harsh used car lot look that casts shadows everywhere. Nowhere in my post do I say that I prefer insufficient dull yellow lighting. Pleasant yellow lighting can be bright enough to provide adequate light, and why would people who like the new lights not bother posting here? You apparently like the new lights, and you took the time to post here, and that's a good point. Like, there'd be a lot more people complaining about there'd be a lot of people sort of saying like, no, you're wrong, we like the new lights. Actually, I'm hoping. I trust there will be crime statistics comparisons. People will be too sleepy to commit crime. No, because the lights wake them up and make them more cranky, so the crime will probably go up. But I don't know. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff that people don't consider when they consider how they're going to do an area up. And areas with, for instance, more trees and more plant life actually have a lower crime rate. And I think it's because greenery has an effect on people that relaxes them more. Like, people like nature. If there's not a lot of nature in an area, it's going to make people more miserable. And therefore, miserable people are going to commit more crimes because people who are apathetic and don't care about like the local people in the area or don't care about other stuff like that, like they're going to be the ones committing more crime. I used to be like that. But always with a headlamp, and I will continue to do so. I kind of enjoy the bright illumination, except when I inadvertently look right at it, though I can understand how annoying it would be to have entering. It makes the non-illuminant areas, which there are many, pitch dark. Oh yeah, this person's noting the same thing I noticed with the shadows. Um, are there color fill to repair these LED lights? The dim yellow orange lights equals pleasant place to live. Bright blue lights equals industrial. Why did they put it with question marks? I guess they're like. I mean, I don't know where this person has ever been where they're like, oh, as an industrial warehouse zone unpleasant? I mean, have you been to a warehouse zone? They have a lot of very bright lights, especially the train ones. These lights are less safe because they have a more direct light, while brighter. This person noticed what I noticed. Thank you, Berkeley. These lights are way better than the previous old-style Cobra headlights. That almost seems like a bot comment. It's very strange. The lights really brighten up. Much safer to walk around at night. Did anyone remember that Berkeley was supposed these LED lights are garish, atrocious. If you stare at them long enough, you'll really hate them. I mean, I hate this comment. The sun is one spot in the sky, and it's not every 20 feet that a you don't have a sun every 20 feet that you're having to avoid looking at. This is a really dumb comment. I hate when people think they're being clever and they make stupid comments like that. Include that the new lights include an option for field installed house shields. In other cities, the contractor tank has delivered an inventory of installable house shields to the clients at the end of the contract. The loan, blah blah blah, and should have recourse. The city should have the problem is the house shields are going to obscure the light a little bit. Like, I like the idea, but it's going to create more shadows with these lights. Thank you for New lights are great. It's milder light that's easier on the eyes at night. Huh. I mean, that's true, and that's really the only advantage that LED lights have over sodium lights in terms of their actual lighting is that it doesn't go upward into the sky. But that depends on the brightness of the light, though. If they're bright enough, it's going to reflect back into the sky. When I replaced the 40 with my wife immediately complained that they were too harsh, too bright, and too blue. Somehow the LEDs heard her whine and adjusted themselves so that they are not only complete. This guy's talking about house lights, not outdoor lights. Now I can see. If they also include I don't know. It seems like it's like a 50-50 and like the new LED lights make you don't want shadows in a city. You don't want like deep shadows. Like that's a bad thing. I don't think they can actually tune them or anything like that. We have a new streetlight right in front of our house. They're a different color, but I don't find them brighter. I don't mind them, but I think any claims of increased safety are overrated. There are still plenty of shadowed dark spots on the street where the light doesn't reach. There are only 3 lights on our block, and they're all on the same side of the street. We leave our porch light on all night to illuminate the sidewalk and appreciate it when others do too. I'm glad you're. Man, what a dick. I'm glad you're not my man. Like I used to do this too. Like I'd respond to comments that pissed me off and say, smart alecky comments. And you just kind of realize over time there's not really much reason. It just creates conflict and you're not like if somebody has a particularly strong stance on something, you're just gonna either piss them off more or you're not gonna convince them of your comment. But that's not what this video is about. Doctors warning about LED streetlights. I tell you one thing I hate about this. Highways are a very, very ugly part of any city. In this picture, the highway is not quite as obnoxiously noticeable as this picture here. Like, this one kind of blends in more with the cityscape. This one just, it looks like a gigantic missile being launched towards the city. Looks like an airport runway. Additional about street lighting, cool it and dim it. Cool it, huh? The statement adopted unanimously at the AMA's annual meeting in Chicago on June 14th comes in response to the rise of new LED street lighting. And AMA issued guidelines on how communities can choose LED streetlights to minimize harmful health and environmental impacts. Municipalities are replacing existing streetlights with efficient and long-lasting LEDs. Apparently 15 years is long-lasting for a light fixture. To save money on energy and maintenance, although streetlights are delivering these benefits. Oh, I should mention too, don't buy integrated LED fixtures for your house either because you're going to have the same problem, probably even sooner, where you're going to be replacing these fixtures probably every 10 years because they're residential fixtures as opposed to commercial ones. Like I'd buy a regular incandescent fixture and put an LED bulb in it. Because then if you decide you don't like the light that the fixture gives off, you can always change out the bulb to something more to your specifications, and you don't have to replace the whole fixture. Like, there is no practical reason for buying a fully integrated LED fixture. Like, always buy one that's always just buy an incandescent fixture and put an LED bulb in it. There is no advantage to buying one that's all one fixture. Although the streetlights are delivering these benefits, the AMA's stance reflects on in between light and human health. The AMA statement recommends that outdoor lighting at night, particularly street lighting, should have a color temperature of no greater than 3,000 Kelvin. Let's find. Do they have an actual chart? Nope, no chart. It sucks, but whatever. Is a measure of the spectral content of light from a source, how much blue, green, yellow, and red there is in it. Higher CT rating generally means greater blue content. Weight LED at this has been the choice for a number of cities that have recently retrofitted their street lighting, such as Seattle and New York. But in the wake of these installations have been complaints about the harshness of these lights. An extreme example is the city of Davis, California, where the residents demanded a complete replacement of these high color temperature LED streetlights. Can communities have more efficient street lighting without causing health and safety problems? Yeah, you can put the sodium lights back. Because like sodium lights are already very energy efficient. Like, they're much better than just regular incandescent lights, but just about anything's more energy efficient than incandescent. So I don't know. Before we burned wood and candles at night, this artificial light has a count of about 1800 Kelvin. So that's 1800 versus what did they say it was? 4,000, 5,000. Let's be generous and say 4,000. So that would be twice as much for that. And they were yellow, red with and almost no blue. What we have now is very different. The new white LED street lighting, which is rapidly has two problems according to the AMA. The first is discomfort and glare, because LED light is so concentrated and has high blue content. It has it can cause severe glare, resulting in pupillary constriction of the eyes. Blue light scatters more in the human eye than the longer wavelengths of yellow and red, and sufficient levels can damage it can actually damage the retina, huh? I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad. This can cause problems seeing clearly for safe driving or walking at night. You can sense this easily if you look directly into one of the control lights on your new washing machine or other appliance. It is very difficult to do because it hurts. Street lighting can have this same effect, especially if its blue content is high, and therefore the other issue addressed by the AMA is the impact of human circadian rhythm. Color temperature reliably predicts spectral content of light. That is how much of each wavelength is present. It's designed specifically for light that comes off the tungsten filament of an incandescent bulb. New Atlas, what is it? However, the CT rating does not reliably measure color from fluorescent and LED lights. Another system for measuring light color for these is spectrum light, two different 3000 K lights. The reason lighting matters, the AMC is the AMA policy statement is particularly timely because the New World Atlas of Artificial Night Sky Brightness just appeared last week. And street lighting is an important component of light pollution. According to the AMA statement, one of the considerations of lighting the night is its impact on human health. In previous articles for the conversation, I have described how lighting affects our normal circadian physiology, how this could lead to some serious health consequences, and most recently, how lighting the night affects sleep. In the case of white LED light, it is estimated to be 5 times more effective at suppressing melatonin at night than the high-pressure sodium lamps, given the same light output, which have been the mainstay of street lighting for decades. Melatonin suppression is marker of circadian disruption, which includes disrupted sleep. A dark night is good for your health. Bright electric lighting can also adversely affect wildlife, for example, disturbing migratory patterns of birds and some aquatic animals which nest on shore. Street lighting and human health. The AMA has made 3 recommendations in its new policy statement. First, the AMA supports a proper conversion to community-paced light-emitting diode lighting, which reduces energy consumption and decreases the use of fossil fuels. Secondly, the AMA encourages minimizing the controlling blue-rich environmental lighting by using the lowest emission of blue light possible to reduce glare. Third, the AMA this is just what they encourage, but I'm gonna end the video here because I've been going on for more than an hour, and most of you probably aren't gonna even want to watch the video for that long. So, uh, I guess for a fitting leaving comment, sleep well.